Donald Trump wins in South Carolina by record numbers. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Unwoke Thoughts. Today we are talking about Donald Trump's record win in South Carolina. Before we talk about it, guys, please hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. But yesterday, the race was called for Donald Trump very early on, almost exactly at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, before really any of the votes had even been tabulated. But the mainstream media saw the writing on the wall and called the race for Donald Trump almost immediately. And shortly thereafter, Donald Trump came on stage and declared victory, gave a short speech, and of course, he touted his record numbers. Listen to this.
Thank you very much. Wow. That is really something. This was a little sooner than we anticipated. It was an even bigger win than we anticipated. And I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina. So that's pretty good. So it's a record times two. And there's something going on in the country. Some really great things are going on.
So yes, even Donald Trump was surprised at how quickly the mainstream media called the race. And his vote numbers were massive, over 450,000 votes compared to when Joe Biden won the state. I believe it was about 120,000 votes. So quite a big difference when you compare the two numbers. But during his speech, and I thought this was pretty funny, Donald Trump brought on stage Lindsey Graham, and he introduced him to the crowd, of course. Everybody knew who he was. And Lindsey Graham walked up to the podium with resounding boos, to which Trump had to kind of defend him a little bit. He's like, no, I love him. No, he's okay. He's an all right guy.
He doesn't do too much television. He happens to be a little bit further left than some of the people on the stage. But I always say, when I'm in trouble on the left, I call up Lindsey Graham and he straightens it out so fast. And I'll tell you, no, remember. I love him. He's a good man. Come up here, Lindsey. Come up here, Lindsey. Come here.
Okay.
So Donald Trump had to kind of encourage Lindsey Graham to walk up to the podium after the crowd started booing so brutally when they saw the neocon senator. And guys, I don't know if you noticed, but towards the end of the video there, Lindsey Graham attempted to fist bump Donald Trump. And I think it was one of the most awkward fist bump attempts I've ever seen in my entire life. I literally laughed out loud when I saw that. But even though Donald Trump had historic numbers, he beat Nikki Haley in her own home state, and I'm about to show you guys here in a second, he actually beat Nikki Haley in her own hometown. The mainstream media, and specifically here, MSNBC, said, quote, "These numbers are disastrous for Donald Trump." Wow.
37% who voted Haley, who would they vote for in a general election? Lawrence needs to wait. I mean, this is like your sweet spot. How is Joe Biden looking at this 37%?
These numbers are disastrous for Donald Trump. Disastrous, okay? That's the reason I mentioned that the big forgotten number of South Carolina, which is Joe Biden getting 96%, okay? That's what you're supposed to get, all right? And Donald Trump's not going to come close to that. Donald Trump's going to leave 30%, I don't know, 25%, whatever it is. Of
37%.
Not yet. We don't know. We don't know what the result of this election is tonight, but it's going to be a very substantial number. Could be a third of the vote. He's going to leave that on the table belonging to another candidate. All you need is 5% of the 30%. Yeah. We're talking about a sliver. Yeah. That's all you need to not vote for Donald Trump, of this representative kind of voter in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Georgia. And so these are disastrous voting results for Donald Trump in the general election. Well, not South Carolina. He's going to win South Carolina. But that voter in the Haley vote package is represented in New Hampshire, is represented in these other states, and is represented in all the other swing states. Wisconsin, you need a tiny slice of them, and 10,000 of them.
Now, I think it's kind of funny what the media is doing here, because once again, they are lying and they are gaslighting and they are manipulating everybody. Because yes, even though Joe Biden may have gotten 96.2% of the vote, look at his vote numbers right here. This is from Google. You can look it up yourself. 96.2% of the vote, 126,336. Donald Trump, got 451,000 votes. And not just that, but if you look at Nikki Haley's numbers, you know, and you can see from polls that she had a lot of Democrats voting for her. Now, what do I mean by this? How do I know this other than the fact that Nikki Haley's campaign was specifically targeting Democrats, sending them flyers and telling them that they should vote because Joe Biden is the de facto nominee for Democrats. So he wasn't running in any primary in South Carolina. So they were saying, hey, you should use your vote and cast it for Nikki Haley as a way to hurt Trump. But the other way I know this is from this poll right here. If you look here in the light red is Donald Trump, in the dark red or maroon is Nikki Haley. And the questions that were asked were, was your vote for president mainly, number one, for your candidate, or number two, against their opponent? Now, if you look at this graph, and I know it might be a little bit confusing, but 74% of those who voted for Donald Trump voted for their candidate, compared to only 25% who voted for Nikki Haley. And for the second question, where they asked if they voted against their opponent, only 22% of those who voted for Donald Trump voted against their opponent, but 77% of those that were asked this question voted against Donald Trump. So all of these votes that Nikki Haley is getting are either never Trumpers who are Republicans, or I suspect that the majority of them are Democrats. Also, I think it's pretty interesting that MSNBC did not point out that Nikki Haley actually had a disastrous performance, because they were trying to kind of downplay her loss in her own home state. But it was not just regulated to her own home state. It was also her hometown, which is Bamberg. Now look at this. This is the graph from the primary yesterday. And look at this. Bamberg County, 65% Trump, 35% Nikki Haley. Now, if you ask me, that is a pretty big landslide against Nikki Haley in her own hometown. So this kind of shows you what the sentiment is like in South Carolina. But despite her terrible performance, and despite the fact that she lost not only in her own home state, but her own hometown, Nikki Haley is declining to drop out of the race. And she's saying that she is going to soldier on, much to the chagrin of everybody in the United States. Watch.
We need to beat Joe Biden in November. I don't believe Donald Trump can beat Joe Biden. Nearly every day, Trump drives people away, including with his comments just yesterday. Today in South Carolina, we're getting around 40% of the vote. That's about what we got in New Hampshire, too. I'm going to count it. I know 40% is not 50%. But I also know 40% is not some tiny group.
So yeah, she's continuing her rhetoric, attacking Donald Trump and almost declaring victory in South Carolina, even though she only got 40% of the vote. But I think you should kind of put an asterisk on that as well, because not only is it 40% of the vote, Nikki Haley, but you lost in your own home state. These people that should know you and should like you more than other states. And not only that, but you lost in your own hometown. That is embarrassing, and you are an embarrassment. But many people are wondering, why is Nikki staying in the race? How can she afford this? Isn't it very expensive to run a presidential campaign like this, even though you have no shot at winning at all? Now, Donald Trump, I think he was spot on when he said this. He said Nikki Haley is not in this race to fight for you. She's in the bidding for big donors, or maybe she wants to get a contract on CNN. But watch.
Nikki Haley is not in this race to fight for you. She's in the bidding for big donors, or maybe she wants to get a contract on CNN. You know, did you see their ratings? Uh-oh, there go the CNN cameras off. Why did I do that?
But yes, that's how she is staying in this race. She's got big donors, including a lot of Democrat donors, including a lot of Biden donors. Big Biden donors, guys. Yes, that is correct. Not only is she a neocon, but she's barely even a Republican. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to come right out and say it. She's a Democrat. Look at this. This is from Politico. Haley attracts Biden donors as she tries to chase down Trump. Tries, I think, is a key word there. The former UN ambassador attracted thousands of donations from those who gave to the president during his 2020 campaign. Wow, okay. This is interesting. My interest is piqued, guys. Let's take a look at this and see what's going on here. Former UN ambassador Nikki Haley is attracting thousands of donations from people who gave to President Joe Biden's 2020 campaign as she tries to cobble together a coalition of anti-Trump voters. More than 5,200 donors to Biden's 2020 campaign have backed Haley financially, including roughly 1,600 who gave more than $500,000 in January alone. $500,000 from these Biden donors was given to Haley's campaign in January alone. So they are really putting their weight behind Nikki Haley. That's very interesting. And this is according to a political analysis of Haley's most recent fundraising efforts filed Tuesday night with the Federal Election Commission. That report lists donors who give at least $200 total, and Haley's campaign reported raising money from more than 55,000 such large dollar donors in the month of January, and 123,000 in total over the course of her entire campaign. But crossover donors who give to politicians of both parties are generally rare in politics. So they're saying these aren't really crossover donors. These are donors who only specifically give to one party or another, to one candidate or another. But in this case, in this rare specific instance, they have decided to back Nikki Haley, making the number of donors who previously gave to Biden notable. It's especially striking because Haley is currently running in the Republican primary to be the nominee to take on Biden in November. So all of this rhetoric that Nikki Haley touts that she would beat Biden in a general election runoff is 100% wrong. Do you think these donors would back Nikki Haley to beat Donald Trump if she had such a massive chance to beat Biden in a general runoff? I don't think so. But in total, Haley's campaign raised $11.5 million and spent $13.1 million last month, according to the report her campaign filed late Tuesday. That makes January, the month of the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary, her highest grossing month so far as she emerged as the sole GOP challenger to Trump. Her campaign reported having just shy of $13 million in the bank as of January 31st, compared to more than $30 million in cash on hand reported by Trump's campaign. The former UN ambassador has tried to attract unaffiliated voters. She noted on the campaign trail recently in her home state of South Carolina that anyone who did not vote in the Democratic primary earlier this month is eligible to vote for her this Saturday, and her allies have more actively courted Democrats. Yeah, see, she was trying to attract these Democratic voters who, they're not going to vote for a Democrat nominee because Joe Biden is the de facto Democrat candidate. So she's trying to artificially inflate her numbers in her own home state of South Carolina. And I think she did the same thing in New Hampshire as well. But the financial numbers included in Haley's campaign report do not represent the entirety of her fundraising. Team Stand for America, a joint fundraising committee between Haley's campaign and other political committees she controls, does not have to file a disclosure with the Federal Election Commission until April. And it's clear that Haley is still plowing money into advertising as she tries to chase down Trump. Yeah, good luck, Nikki Haley. His lead just keeps getting bigger and bigger, but she still keeps screaming away. Her campaign spent nearly $7.4 million on media production and placement, accounting for more than half of its spending. So she is literally hemorrhaging money in ads, in media, to try to beg people to vote for her. The main pro-Haley super PAC, SFA Fund Inc., also reported spending nearly $13.7 million in January alone. That's more than the major pro-Trump super PAC, MAGA Inc., spent, and more than double what the pro-Trump operations spent on efforts like television advertising or get out the vote efforts. I think it's interesting also here, guys, that they don't mention how much Trump spent compared to Nikki Haley. Now, I don't have a graph to show you, but I was looking this up yesterday while this primary was going on, while the votes were being tabulated. Trump spent less than $2 million in South Carolina. Now compare that to Haley's $13.7 million. So you can see why they did not include those numbers in this article, because this is Politico we're talking about here. So it looks like Nikki Haley is really grasping at straws when it comes to her presidential campaign. I'm not sure what her plans are or why she is staying in the race. What do you guys think? Why do you think Nikki Haley is staying in the race? And what do you think about all this money that she spent in South Carolina compared to Donald Trump, who only spent, what, it was like 1.7 million or something like that? And what do you think about the fact that the majority of her voters were voting against Donald Trump? Do you think that's an indication that it was mostly Democrats who voted for her? Let me know what you think about this down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until then, I will see you on the next one.